Hello everybody, my name's Tess Ryan. My channel is Terry Ryan, but I go by Tess. I just thought I would make this video. I've had this little voice in my head saying that I needed to say these things once again about domestic violence. We've got White Ribbon Day coming up on the 23rd of November, and this is awareness of domestic violence and the voice for domestic violence. Anybody who wanted to see my story, if you go to my channel, Terry Ryan, on YouTube, you can have a look at my story. I did another video about what you can learn, what I learned from domestic violence, but today what I really wanted to do was be a voice for domestic violence and let other people know what they can do and what not to do if you come across a victim. Crime statistics say that 1 in 3 women that are murdered is due to domestic violence of their partner killing them. You also have the men who are being killed. The statistics on that, according to the statistics on crime, are 1 out of 6 men that are murdered is due to domestic violence. A lot of these are from possibly gay marriages as well, so once again you do have men killing men. And what I wanted to bring forth, which is really important with domestic violence, is that there is a need for education, because a lot of people are ignorant about why people are in domestic violence situations. When I was going through domestic violence, I had many people saying to me, why do you put up with what you're putting up with? If you're willing to stay there, well then it's your own fault. I can tell you a few instances. There was a time when I was really desperate help. I felt so caged in and on eggshells that I went to my mother one day and told her about the torment that I felt, and I didn't get what I wanted. She would not give me any advice. She more or less told me, you made your bed, and that's the way it was in those days with women of her age anyway, that it didn't, regardless of what your life was in a marriage, that if you made your bed, you laid in it. Anyway, I went home that day feeling absolutely devastated because at home it was living on complete eggshells. And what I want people to realise is how the victim feels and why they stay in a situation of domestic violence. The thing is, domestic violence, it doesn't happen one day where your lights are just punched out. It doesn't happen that way, because when you get in a committed relationship, you've invested your time in that relationship, and quite often it starts in more camouflaged ways. In my case, my husband, he started just calling me stupid and things like that. He would call me ugly. So it didn't start in a physical sense. It started in a derogatory sense by the things that he said to me. He also did gaslighting to me. Anybody who doesn't know what gaslighting is, it's when they manipulate you in a way that they make you feel like you're crazy, you're insane. And this is what he did too. He told me I was naive, that I couldn't understand things, and I wouldn't be able to cope on my own. Later on in the relationship, and it started usually when he was drinking or he was taking prescription drugs, he would then come home and he would explode and go into a violent temper. He started out just throwing things at walls. So he didn't start with violence straight up, and that's how it was more disguised, and that's why I tolerated it a bit more. I just thought he had a bad temper, and then it was one day he did start to spit at me, pull my hair and push me into things, and and put his hands around my neck, tried to choke me. He always got knives out, put knives up against my throat, but that was later down the track. And I all the time attributed that to his drinking and the prescription drugs that he took with the alcohol. But mind you, as time went by, as the years went by, it got to a point where he didn't need to have alcohol or drugs in his system. He was just a nasty person and a violent person, and he needed no excuse to do what he did. And eventually the colours came out with him. So as a seed, as you plant a seed, and the seed with him was he planted that nasty word. He planted that word in me where I got to the stage where I felt he was right, that perhaps I couldn't cope without him. And he told me also that I was stupid, that nobody else would want me. So he put me in a place where I felt like, well, nobody else would want me, so I had to stay with him. Also, he used the fear factor as well. He told me that if I left him, he would hunt me down and kill me. He would kill my family. He threatened that if I took his children away from him, that he would kill me. So I had that fear factor there. So the way he did it, and the way domestic violence with victims work, is first they plant that seed. They plant that seed, and eventually that seed festers and it grows and it manifests within a victim. And then, of course, you don't tell other people, because then once the fear is there, then the shame develops. So you feel shameful. Like I had this shame factor that it more or less destroyed my happily ever after dream that I'd created for myself when I married him, and turned into a nightmare on Elm Street. And that's what it was like, living with the monster. And I was ashamed to tell people that I'd failed in picking a person that wasn't nice to me. And I felt like I was failing in my marriage, and with my Christian belief, I felt that I would be doing the wrong thing if I did leave him, because divorce wasn't really acceptable as a Christian. That's what I believed back then. So you see, very gradually, you're wound up in the roots that seed has first planted within you. And so you're frightened to tell people. Another thing that a domestic violence, a control freak will do to you is they cut you off from your family. And I found he was constantly putting down my family. Any friend that I had, he was always putting them down and making derogatory remarks. So I got to a place where I would always steer him off the topic, and I got to a place where I just didn't even go and see them, because I knew it was going to cause so much drama and so much trouble for me when he found out that I'd seen them or I was with them, that I stopped seeing friends, and I stopped seeing the family a lot of the time. Even though I was still attending the church, I used to leave straight after church and not really talk much to anybody. So that's the way they get you in, so that you feel totally controlled. And at the time I had people saying to me, even the police, because there was at times I called the police on him, and the police said, well, why didn't you just leave? And I mean, that in itself, if you're thinking about a person who is in that situation, you have been beaten down, your spirit has been crushed. You're beaten down psychologically, emotionally and physically. And mind you, back in those days, I felt that the bruises were far better than the emotional and the psychological abuse that I was getting. It was blackmail, psychologically blackmail, and I felt, well, at least the bruises, they only took 1 or 2 weeks to heal, but the psychological, emotional state remained. And while I was with him, I was always standing on those eggshells, not knowing what to expect. So therefore, somebody coming along and saying to you, oh, well, why don't you just leave him? They didn't understand the threats that were behind leaving him. You know, I believed it because he used to be abusive to me. He was violent to me. So therefore, I knew that he would take out what his threats were. And as it turned out, he was, after I did leave him, he stalked me for 4 or so years. Then I divorced him. But he ended up getting murdered by one of his friends in a knife fight, and he was stabbed fatally from that. And I'd found out after that he had a grand plan for me and the children to kill me and kill the children. So I have no doubts that if he had had his way and it wasn't God's way, that he would have tried to kill me and the children. So what I'm saying is, think about what you're saying with victims, because if you can put yourself in that position where you feel like you've got a broken spirit, you feel beaten down emotionally and physically, saying something like, why don't you just leave? That provides no helpful way at all. There's no solution in saying something like that. And really, victims like I were, we are like caged animals. We are looking for an escape. Do you think we like being treated the way we're treated? No, we don't. We don't want to be treated that way. We are looking for an escape. And saying something like that just doesn't provide a way of escape. And this is what we're looking for. Once again, I had a cousin also said, I can go and take my baseball bat and beat him up for you. Well, where's the solution in that? I mean, what was going to happen when I went home to him after he'd been beaten up? Who do you think he would have taken it out on? Me. He would have hunted me down. It would have been all my fault, because for a narcissist, nothing is their fault. They don't see fault with themselves. It's everybody else. And I was the whipping post at the time, so I was the one who would have copped all the abuse and the blame for what had happened to him. So saying things like this is not helpful. So what a domestic violence person needs is they need a way of escape. But even though if you give them a way of escape, like names, numbers, housing, places where they can get things, don't pressure them, because the amount of pressure they are already under is phenomenal. It's phenomenal, the amount of pressure that you are under. And you feel like that on one half you've got the rational person trying to get you out of the position, pulling you one way, and then you've got your domestic, a violent person pulling you the other way, and you're the one in the middle. You feel like you are torn completely down the middle. So therefore, don't put pressure on that person to get out, but provide solutions for that person. So give them numbers. Offer your house that any time that they need to leave, they're welcome. Whenever you're ready, this is the type of thing you should be saying. Whenever you're ready, if you want to move out from there, I'm always there. I'll help you. You can come to my place as an emergency place. Here's a place here where you can go for refuge. Here's a place here where you can go and get help financially. And this is the type of thing you need to provide. You need to provide that little gap where they can get out, because eventually when they make the decision, when it gets so bad for them, they will try and seek that escape. And that's what a domestic violence victim feels like and is looking for. Mind you, some may not. Some may be too beaten down and too scared, and they may stay in the situation. But once again, everybody's got free will to do as they want. You'll find the majority of the people, they will get to a place where they want out, and they just need that encouragement to be able to do that. But until then, be a friend to them. Be a friend to them and let them speak to you. Let them vent to you, because the first step is being able to get over that shame that you feel, to be able to speak what's really going on with you. So I hope that helps you realise the position of a person suffering domestic violence, because they aren't in a good place. And with me, I was, if you can say, lucky in a way, because after my husband passed away, I didn't have that stalking anymore. However, I did watch my own daughter go through the same thing, which was horrific. But I did already know what a victim really needs to get away, so I provided her with that gap. I got her a car. I said to her, pack your bag, keep a bag in there in case you need to get out. I didn't pressure her because I knew what it was like to be pressured as a victim. So I'm hoping that explains a little bit of what not to do. Don't ever put them down and say, why don't you get out, or you deserve it because you're there, or you've married that person, so lie in your own bed, because it's not providing any helpful escape for them. It's no solution, and it's just putting more pressure on the person and making them feel more defeated. So hopefully that will help you, just as a bit of advice of if you know of anybody in the situation of domestic violence. And I would say almost everybody does, whether it be in your family or a friend or a son or daughter's friend. We all know somebody in that position. So hopefully you can remember those things and be able to do a bit of a study on it yourself and find what you can do to help a person trying to escape from the domestic violence. And I'll leave it there. And if anybody wants to watch any of my other videos, I do have a book coming too. The book's in the publisher right now. And when that's published, I will do a short video to show that. So if anybody wants to see my story or other videos that I've done on my page, feel free. Thank you.